guys, and welcome to this editing tutorial. So for this particular tutorial, I'm going to show you what Camera Raw is, how to use Camera Raw before moving the images from Camera Raw to Photoshop. So I basically will show you everything about Photoshop, so I don't use Lightroom, but I think it works in similar ways as well. So once you save your images, if you shoot in RAW, your images will save as a RAW file. And then once you take them off your SD card, as I always say, make sure you save them on a hard drive or cloud drive. And then when you go to edit them, usually they will open in Camera Raw. So when you go to open them in Photoshop, automatically Photoshop opens a section before that called Camera Raw. So I'm going to select some 3 images that are RAW files. So they're .cr2 on my SD card. And I will open them. So I've selected them and I'll just hit open, and you'll see that they will open automatically into Camera Raw. So as you can see here, Camera Raw at the moment it's 9.12.1. I'm using my Canon S6D, and this is the RAW files. Now Camera Raw is good. Now I know my current Photoshop, I use Adobe Creative Cloud, always needs updating, upgraded, but at the time of this recording, this is how it looks like. So yours could look different, but pretty much it's all the same. So what it does is on the left-hand side, it shows you all the images you've selected. So you might open the whole gallery that you need to edit, and that is always under a section called Film Strip. So it's got all the images there. I usually go one by one and adjust the colors, any highlights, any shadows, and work, on a particular one. I don't go into all the like cropping, all the other options that Camera Raw has. Pretty much you can do a bit of editing, gradients and colors and that in there. I leave that to Photoshop if I was wanting to do anything. But I pretty much, how I use Camera Raw is pretty much to adjust the temperature, any exposure, contrast, the shadows, highlights and things like that, which I'll show you just in a second. So it will open up, you can zoom in, you can zoom out of an image just to see, but I usually keep it pretty much standard size. And then to your right there, you can see the histogram there, and it'll show you where the brightness are and the colors. It'll show you what I shot it at, my ISO and all that stuff, the lens, and all that information is there too, which is great. So if you ever want to refer back to the image, okay, I shot it at with my 24 to 105 mil, at 35 mil I shot it at 1/200, at f4, I shot it at my ISO was 640 at the time. As I use natural light, this changes dramatically, like all the time. So we usually I look at the temperature, and sometimes it always depends on the baby's skin. So usually Indian babies, like this baby's an Indian baby, so usually they're not nice, have warm skin, so I don't put too much temperature on them. I might even reduce it just a bit. Exposure depends on the feel of your image as well. It's a personal preference, but you can go dark, you can go light. Don't go too light, you'll blow it out. But I like to keep it, as now I have trained myself to shoot really good, so my images don't need a lot of fixing in Camera Raw or Photoshop. Pretty much they just always need slightly adjusting. So the contrast is good. So the shadows you'll see here around her neck there, the shadows. So if I pull down the shadows, it'll just create more shadows there. Because she has dark hair, let's keep it at about +1, so lift the shadows a bit. You can play with the whites, with the highlights as well. I try, and if the image is good, I try not to play around with it as much. So that's one image done. If I go to the next image, I can work with that as well, and the third image as well. So I like my images bright, so I'll lift the exposure just a bit. The shadows I might create just a little bit, not too much, and that's pretty much it. Now play around with those. The only way you can understand Camera Raw is to open up a few images and play around with them. If you know that, great. Another thing I see a lot of new photographers like to use, because they think that the skin would be smoothed out automatically, is the clarity button. If I do that, you will get a smooth skin, but it will wash out everything. So if you like that feel, great, go ahead. I rely on my actions to do things like that, my brush sets and things like that, but you can give it a bit of less clarity so that way it sort of blurs it out. But I really don't play with it personally. I think it's just a personal preference of the overall end image and how you want it to look. The vibrance, you can put more color and vibrance into it, which will make it very contrasty. I leave it. It's just a personal preference, but I like to leave these. Saturation, so you can saturate the image, add more color to it. If it needs it, by all means, do use these three: clarity, vibrance, and saturation. Now, once we're happy with all the images and we're ready to put them into Photoshop, all you need to do is you can select some or select them all, and you just select them all by hitting Command on your Mac, select them all, or you can go to the four lines next to Film Strip and put Select All, and then down the bottom on your right it says Open Images. Now I like to open copies, and if you hover over it, it does say Open Selected Images as Normal Images. Open option, click to open without updating the image metadata. So I like to do that. Someone told me once it's the best way to do it so that way it doesn't lose anything. Shift click to open as smart object. So it gives you that option. So personally, I will select option on my Mac, and then you see there, once I hit option, it changes to open copies. Then I click with my mouse and it will open the copies of it. So that will open there. And once they're opened, you can start editing in Photoshop using your steps or your actions that you like to use. But that's pretty much how to use Camera Raw and what Camera Raw is. If you have any questions, do let me know in the Facebook group. I should also mention before ending this tutorial that they will open in RAW files. So once you edit them, you'll need to convert them to JPEGs, or just file save as and go JPEG, or batch save them as JPEG. So hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll see you in another tutorial. Bye for now.